You have never seen the world clearly. Not once. Not even for a single second of your entire life. Right now, look at the wall beside you. Pick a spot and stare at it. Your brain is telling you that you are seeing it fully, completely, accurately. It is wrong. There is a hole in your vision, a small, permanent region of total blindness where your optic nerve connects to your retina, containing 0 photoreceptors. 0. You are blind there, right now. You were blind there yesterday. You will be blind there for the rest of your life, and you have never once seen the gap, because your brain fills it in. It manufactures what it thinks should be there, stitches the invention seamlessly into your perception, and delivers the finished lie to your conscious mind as unquestionable reality. That is not a glitch. That is the system working exactly as designed. Try this right now. Close your left eye. Hold your right index finger at arm's length. Focus on a fixed point straight ahead. Slowly move your finger to the right. Somewhere near the edge of your visual field, your finger will vanish. Not because it moved, not because the light changed, because your brain quietly stopped reporting it and decided, without consulting you, not to mention that fact. You just felt your brain lie to you in real time. Sit with that. Because if it does that to something as solid and immediate as a finger in front of your face, what else is it editing? What else has it always been editing every single day without a word? In 1999, 2 psychologists at Cornell University published a study so unsettling that debate around it still echoes decades later. Their names were David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger. Their conclusion? The least competent people in any given domain consistently rated themselves as highly skilled, while genuine experts chronically underestimated their own abilities. Incompetence does not arrive with self-awareness. It strips away the tools needed to detect itself. You cannot see what you do not know enough to see, and you will never feel the edges of what you are missing. But the deceptions run deeper still. In 1974, cognitive psychologist Elizabeth Loftus and her colleague John Palmer published a study at the University of Washington that fundamentally rewrote what science understood about human memory. Their subjects watched footage of car accidents, then answered one simple question, with one small, almost insultingly mundane variation. When asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed into each other versus when they contacted each other, participants gave dramatically different speed estimates. Not because they saw different footage, because they heard a different word. A single ordinary verb, the kind you use without thinking 50 times a day, quietly rewrote what their brains had filed as witnessed fact. In follow-up sessions, those same subjects confidently reported broken glass that was never in the footage, debris no camera had captured, details their minds had manufactured wholesale and stored under things I definitely saw. The trigger was not dramatic, it was not emotional, it was one word. That is what makes it terrifying. Your memories are not recordings. They are reconstructions, rebuilt every time you access them, and silently altered with each rebuild. Think about the most vivid memory you possess, the one you'd defend without hesitation. Hold it with open hands, because the answer to what your mind is actually doing is coming, and you are going to hate it. Before we go any further, before we step into the courtroom, before we dismantle the idea of free will, understand something. Work like this stays human only because of the humans behind it. If these deep dives into the hidden architecture of your own mind resonate with you, consider subscribing and joining us. It's a small decision, one your brain will probably justify later, but it allows this channel to stay independent, curious, and grounded in real investigation. Now, let's see what else your mind has been hiding. In 1999, 2 psychologists at Harvard University ran an experiment so straightforward it should have produced no surprises. Daniel Simons and Christopher Shabris asked volunteers to watch a short video of students passing a basketball and count the passes made by the team in white. Halfway through the video, a person in a full gorilla suit walked into the center of the frame, stopped, thumped their chest for 9 full seconds, and walked off. Approximately 50% of all viewers never saw it. Not because they were distracted, not because the footage was unclear, because their brains had already decided what mattered, and a gorilla did not make the approved list. Now, you may have heard of this. Most people have. But here is what most people miss when they hear it. The gorilla is not the point. The point is the question no one asks afterward. If your brain filtered out a gorilla in plain frame for 9 full seconds, what did it filter out this morning? What did it quietly erase from your perception of that conversation, that decision, that moment you were absolutely certain you had read correctly? The gorilla was the experiment. Your life is the real test, and you never get to see the footage afterward. This phenomenon has a name: inattentional blindness, and it is only the visible surface of something far more systemic. Your brain does not passively receive the world, it aggressively edits it. Every second of conscious experience you have ever had has been filtered, compressed, and reconstructed by processes operating entirely outside your awareness. What reaches your consciousness is not the world. It is your brain's curated summary of the world, and the editorial decisions are made without your knowledge or your consent. Now layer something darker on top of that. In 1966, British psychologist Peter Wason designed the Wason selection task, a simple logical puzzle that the vast majority of educated adults consistently fail. The reason is not complexity, it is something more revealing. People instinctively search only for information that confirms what they already believe, completely ignoring evidence capable of proving them wrong. It is not a flaw that surfaces under pressure. It is the brain's default operating mode, running quietly all the time beneath every judgment you are convinced is objective. You don't Google to learn, you Google to confirm. Think about the last time you researched something and found exactly what you expected. That sensation of information clicking satisfyingly into place, that feeling of being right, is not the feeling of truth. It is the feeling of your brain doing precisely what Wason's research predicted it would do, filtering for agreement, filing away contradiction, constructing a case it had already decided to win. And when reality pushes back too hard, when the evidence piles up against the story already committed to, the brain reaches for one final tool. It manufactures a memory, fills the gap, writes the scene. Psychologists call this confabulation. Research strongly suggests that healthy minds do it in subtle, seamless ways, with complete subjective certainty that nothing has been invented at all. You have never doubted a memory more confidently held than a false one. But what happens when that false confidence walks into a courtroom? What happens when the brain's invisible architecture costs an innocent man everything? On the night of November 2nd, 1987, a man named Ronald Cotton sat inside a North Carolina courtroom for the second time in 3 years and listened again as a woman described with absolute certainty how he had destroyed her life. Jennifer Thompson Canino was not lying. She was not confused. She was one of the most composed, credible, and forensically detailed eyewitnesses prosecutors had ever put on a stand. She had studied her attacker's face during the assault with deliberate, conscious intention, memorizing features, telling herself she would survive and she would make sure he was caught. She had picked Cotton's photograph from a lineup. She had picked his face from a live lineup. She had pointed at him across a courtroom twice. She was certain with every atom of her being, and she was wrong. Ronald Cotton was completely innocent. While Jennifer Thompson Canino testified, Ronald Cotton sat and counted days. He had been counting since 1985. Cold cell, fluorescent light humming overhead in a frequency that never quite lets you sleep. The particular silence of a prison at 3 a.m. that no one who hasn't heard it can fully describe. A silence that isn't quiet at all, but filled with the weight of time that belongs to someone else. He had already given the system years of his life for something he did not do, and now, in this courtroom, it was preparing to take the rest. At Cotton's second trial, prosecutors brought in a man named Bobby Poole, the actual perpetrator, already serving time in the same prison as Cotton. When Cotton pointed to Poole and insisted this was the real attacker, Jennifer Thompson Canino was shown Poole in the courtroom. She felt nothing. No recognition, no hesitation, no flicker of anything that broke the wrong way. Her memory had so completely and irreversibly replaced Bobby Poole's face with Ronald Cotton's that she could look directly at the man who had assaulted her and feel with total certainty that she had never seen him before in her life. Cotton was convicted again, life in prison plus 54 years. He spent more than 10 years behind bars before DNA evidence finally exonerated him in 1995. His case is not an anomaly. It is a documented, repeating pattern that the data has made impossible to ignore. The Innocence Project, founded in 1992 by attorneys Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld at the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law, has spent decades using DNA evidence to free the wrongfully convicted. Their findings are staggering. Eyewitness misidentification has contributed to approximately 69% of wrongful convictions later overturned by DNA evidence, the single leading cause in the entire documented record. Nearly 7 in 10 innocent people imprisoned, put there, at least in part, because a human brain reconstructed something that did not happen the way it happened, and felt completely, unshakably certain that it did. These witnesses were not careless, they were not vindictive, they were wrong with the full, granite conviction of someone who knows they are right. Because that is precisely what a false memory feels like from the inside. Same emotional weight, same sensory vividness, same certainty. From the inside, there is no difference between a real memory and a constructed one. None at all. Jennifer Thompson Canino has since met Ronald Cotton face to face. She has publicly apologized. The two co-wrote a book together, Picking Cotton, and have jointly advocated for eyewitness identification reform across the country. It is one of the most quietly devastating stories in the modern history of memory science. But if memory is this fragile, this invisibly corruptible, what about the memories you are using right now to construct your own identity? What about the version of yourself you have been building and defending your entire life? What if that person is also, quietly, a construction? You are not the CEO of your own mind. You are the press secretary. You don't make the decisions, you announce them, and then you craft the explanation for why they were right all along. In 1974, psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman published a paper in the journal Science that would eventually earn Kahneman a Nobel Prize and permanently alter how economists, psychologists, and neuroscientists understood human judgment. The paper introduced cognitive anchoring, and its implications were so disturbing that many researchers initially refused to accept them. Participants were asked to spin a wheel rigged, without their knowledge, to land on either 10 or 65. They were then asked to estimate the percentage of African nations in the United Nations. Two completely unrelated pieces of information, and yet the number on the wheel silently, powerfully pulled their estimates in its direction. A meaningless random number absorbed moments earlier had hijacked a supposedly independent judgment, and the participants never felt it happen, not even slightly. You are nudged, and then you decide you decided. But anchoring is only one thread. Pull on it far enough and it leads somewhere most people are entirely unprepared to go. Straight into the question of whether the self you experience, the continuous and coherent you that feels so real and so authored, is itself a fabrication. Neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga spent decades studying patients who had undergone corpus callosotomy, a surgical procedure severing the connection between the brain's hemispheres used in severe epilepsy cases. When the hemispheres could no longer communicate, each could be fed separate information and would generate completely different responses. And the left hemisphere, the one with language, would immediately invent a rational explanation for behaviors it had played absolutely no part in producing. Coherent, confident, completely fictional, generated without hesitation and without any awareness that it was fiction at all. Gazzaniga named this the interpreter, a neural mechanism whose sole function is to construct a plausible story from whatever the brain has already done, regardless of the actual cause. You chose the chocolate. Then you explained why. The explanation came second. It always does. In 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet brought this into even sharper focus. Libet measured brain activity in volunteers asked to flex their wrist whenever they freely chose. The brain's readiness potential, the neural buildup preceding movement, began approximately 550 milliseconds before the muscle fired, and crucially, some 350 milliseconds before the volunteers reported any conscious awareness of intending to move at all. The brain had already committed before the person knew they were going to act. Consciousness was not leading, it was following, narrating a story already written and taking credit. Libet's findings remain actively debated in neuroscience, but they opened a door that science has not been able to close. The possibility that what you experience as a free, authored decision is, at least in part, a story constructed after the fact and delivered to you as a lived experience. The self you defend, the opinions you are certain are yours, the choices you believe you made freely, all of it is filtered, assembled, and handed to your conscious mind as seamless reality. You are not the author, you are the reader, and the author has been writing without you all along. So what do you do when you cannot trust the mind doing the thinking? The answer exists, but it demands something most people spend their entire lives carefully, deliberately avoiding. You cannot fix a trap you cannot see. That has been the quiet, relentless truth running beneath every story in this documentary. And the question sitting in your chest right now, heavy, unresolved, and slightly destabilizing, is this: what do you actually do with a mind you cannot fully trust? Because here is what cognitive science discovered next, and almost never said loudly enough. Knowing about a bias does not free you from it. Daniel Kahneman himself, the Nobel laureate who spent his entire career mapping the architecture of human irrationality, openly admitted in his 2011 book, Thinking, Fast and Slow, the decades of studying these biases had not made him immune to them. He still felt the pull of anchoring. He still caught his intuition sprinting ahead of his evidence. The traps are structural. They are not character flaws correctable with self-discipline. They are features of the operating system, and the operating system does not patch itself. But here is what that same science also found, and this is where the ground shifts. The moment you understand that your brain operates on two distinct systems, Kahneman's System 1, the fast, automatic, emotionally charged processor generating your gut reactions, and System 2, the slower, deliberate, effortful reasoning mind, you gain something real. Not immunity, friction. The ability to pause in the space between impulse and action and ask one question that changes everything. What is my brain trying to skip past right now? That pause is not weakness. That pause is the most sophisticated thing a human mind can do. Psychologist Philip Tetlock spent 20 years tracking the predictions of political experts, economists, and senior analysts, published in 2005. In his landmark book, Expert Political Judgment, Most expert predictions performed barely better than random chance, but a specific subset of thinkers consistently outperformed everyone else. They were not more intelligent, not better credentialed. The difference was this: they actively hunted for information that contradicted what they already believed. They treated their own conclusions as hypotheses to stress test, not positions to defend. They were comfortable, genuinely comfortable with the possibility of being wrong. Tetlock called them foxes, drawing on an ancient Greek distinction between the fox, who knows many things, and the hedgehog, who knows one big thing with total, immovable certainty. In a world of systematic cognitive distortion, the fox's restless discomfort with its own conclusions was the most powerful mental tool available. Elizabeth Loftus, whose career was built on proving that memory cannot be trusted, has said publicly that this knowledge changed not how much she trusts her memories, but how she holds them, with open hands rather than a closed fist. With the hard-won recognition that vivid does not mean accurate, and certain does not mean true. The blind spot in your eye is permanent. Your brain will never stop filling it in. But knowing it exists, knowing the fill is fabricated, means you can seek a second source, a second angle, a second pair of eyes. The same principle extends to every blind spot this documentary has uncovered. You cannot eliminate the bias, but you can build habits and relationships specifically designed to catch what your individual mind will always inevitably miss. Your brain is a master deceiver, but it is your deceiver. And now you know exactly how it works. The next thought you have won't feel like a construction. It will feel like you. That's the part you cannot afford to forget.